Okoth, alias Imran, brings us to our discussion today on Africa Week Review. And I have my guest with me, Mr. Onchari Oyeyo, an international relations expert. Karibu sana. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd like us to start there. Here home from the by-election that was held yesterday. And we did see Bernard win, with 24,000 votes, MacDonald Mariga following him with 11,000. But one thing that stood out was the voter turnout, which has been placed at 35.38%. Just to take you through, the registered voters were about 118,000, but those that cast their votes were 41,000. Now, there's a report that has been released today by Haki Africa and other human rights groups, and they're blaming the low voter turnout on, among other issues, insecurity, the fact that it was a Thursday, saying that many people opted to, carry out with their normal businesses. Yeah. And others were saying that the outcome was already a foregone conclusion. What do you think contributed to this really low voter turnout, or is it a trend in the by-elections in Kenya?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to the discussion. I think historically, for voter turnout in by-elections is very, very low. If you look at Mombasa South, it was around 33%. So what we've witnessed in Kibra is not any different from other by-elections. And then again, a couple of issues come up. Number one, the selection of Thursday as a voting day was a bad idea. I don't know why I decided to do that, because it's obviously not a very wise decision. And Kibra was not secured the way we'd expected. You'd expect, because it's just a single by-election and it's the heart of, the CBD and the Nairobi County, you'd expect a lot of, resources in terms of security. We didn't witness that. There were cases of violence. Members of parliament were being whipped or, slapped. Former senator for Kakamega was, seen, there's a trending photo of him, carrying some missiles and all that. So security was not as high as you'd expect. So those are the issues, I think, which contributed to a low voter turnout. But mainly, number one is the historical precedence of low voter turnout in by-elections, and then number two, lack of what? Security. Yeah, I don't think there was something like a bygone conclusion, because I think after the time guys went to vote, it was actually unclear. You couldn't tell whether it was Imran or Mariga.
Yes.
Yeah. Most people were saying, oh, it's a toss-up. It could go either way. In fact, I think the outcome is a shock to so many people. Yeah, of course, apart from me. That is Baba's bedroom.
Why apart from you?
That is.
You saw it coming?
Yes, that is Baba's bedroom, and it's very hard to get a man out of his bedroom. It is very hard. In fact, I'd give a thumbs up to Mariga. He did very well, given that, Kibra has been a place where you don't expect opposition to the candidate who's endorsed by the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Yeah.
Indeed, Baba's bedroom. And from that statement that you've given us, where you're in fact giving Mariga a thumbs up, most of the people have done that on social media. And they're actually saying that, that's part of the consolation for the team. Is it a form of consoling themselves, or did they really do good comparing, now that it's Baba's bedroom, as you're saying? Yeah,
if you look back at 2017, the Jubilee Jubilee candidate got about 13% of the vote. Now that has been, I think, more than doubled, given what Mariga got. And there was a lot of, mobilization from Raila's side. In fact, I think at some point, the scare was so high to a point we had to go to a place like Makueni to get Kibwana. I went to...
The Ukambani leaders.
I got all those Ukambani leaders to come and drum up support. That showed you that there was some kind of scare. There was fear that maybe, the seat could do what? Get out of Baba's hands. But I think the effort paid. So when you look at the kind of effort, of the kind of fight which was put up by, let's say, the deputy president, and what it led to, Kibra is one place you couldn't expect someone from outside to go and hold even a campaign rally of the magnitude we witnessed. So it's progress. And I couldn't give so much credibility or credence to the fighting spirit of the deputy president. I'd actually give credit to the handshake. The handshake was meant to create some kind of harmony among communities. So there was respect for that, and that is why campaigns were largely peaceful.
And he has actually been termed as a handshake candidate. We did see the likes of Anne Waiguru, the governor, Nyeri, and Kirinyaga governor, and of course even youths from Jubilee supporting Bernard Okoth.
I don't think that counted for anything, and I don't think, the president would come out and say Imran is the handshake candidates. It's only some renegades from the, fringes who came out and said, you know what, we're going to support who? Imran as the handshake candidate. If the president could have come out and said this is the handshake candidate, then we could have considered him as such. And some of the guys who came to campaign for Imran from Jubilee actually didn't add any value at all. Because if you look at someone like Maina Kamani, he lost his seat in Stare, someone like Waiguru, that is a guy lady all the way from Kirinyaga. So they don't hold any sway in Nairobi County. Imran won purely and simply because of the influence of the former Prime Minister. I don't think all those guys added any value at all. And you realize even the guys who came from Ukambani, the likes of Mutua, Ngilu, and Kibwana, don't control the Ukambani vote. That is purely on Musyoka's hands. So I don't think they added any value. That is Raila's weight. Yes.
Let's talk about the performance of these other parties, especially those that were, affiliated to NASA. What was once NASA before? For instance, ANC with their candidate Eliud Owalo, because he garnered 5,275 votes, and this in particular has been heavily criticized again on social media and by critics. What do you think of their performance? Well,
Owalo in fact was billed as the best candidate for Kibra, and I'm going to go on national television and say when you get the ability of all the candidates who are running, apart from of course a guy called Landati, Owalo was the best. When it comes to someone who can come up with a vision which can transform a slum like Kibra, the best person could have been Owalo. But then again, political headwinds always carry the day. And I think it's good that he campaigned, he contested, and I don't think he got the votes he got because of Musalia. He got the votes he got because of the roots he has in Kibra as a constituency. Musalia didn't add any value to him. And at some point, the campaign turned tribal. And actually, we were questioning why. If Raila settled for Imran or Koth, Musalia could go ahead and settle for Owalo. So that is how ugly it got. So he got his votes because of his own, persona and his own, credibility as a Kibra constituent and someone who stood with the guys at Kibra. And in fact, if they were left to their own devices, as Owalo, Mariga, and Okoth, Owalo could have given them a run for their money. Yes.
You term him as the best candidate, in your opinion.
Yes.
But how about, for instance, Imran, saying that he served with the late Ken Okoth, he managed the CDF at some point when, the late Okoth was ailing. Oh, why not him?
That is the same issue that has been used to criticize him, because some guys have come out and said, number one, as a brother to the late, giving him the CDF chair seat was a mistake. He shouldn't have been given that. Actually, it's been termed as nepotism.
Yes.
And then the guys who come out and said the way he was giving all the bursaries was not even fair. So it's been used as a weakness for him as a candidate. I'm glad he won, and congratulations to him. Yeah, so I don't think he has a history that you can use to give him some kind of, let's say, credit for anything. Yeah, so all he has to do, now that he's been given the seat, is to go ahead and earn it. Because he didn't win because of him as Imran. He won largely because of Raila. Number two, because of the legacy of his brother. Yeah, so he has to earn the seat now. He has a chance to show that he can indeed do something. Yeah.
What do you make of Mariga's phone call to Imran yesterday night, congratulating him and, saying that he's ready to work with him if Imran is willing?
That is very good. That is the kind of politics we need. In fact, now that sends a message of the impersonalness of politics. When you contest, you're not enemies. You're simply trying to compete and find out which vision sells best. So that is the kind of message we'd like to send to supporters. Don't fight one another. When guys compete, they're not enemies, they're not fighting. So that is very good, I think. And I was disappointed by Imran's speech because it does not actually measure up to Mariga's call where he conceded and told me, hey, I'm willing to work with you. He gave a speech whereby he talked about money. The Kibrans have come out and rejected the idea that you can buy a seat using money. In campaigns, by the very nature of third world countries, is a vote buying process. And we have so many cases where guys win seats because of what? Money. So that is not a speech I expected him to get. In fact, he should have been magnanimous. He should have said, hey, I've been given the seat. I welcome everybody to work with me because Kibra is a slum. That is a place that has been a slum for so long, shamefully so. And our court came out and showed that it can be transformed. So he should have a bigger vision. And like I said earlier, the best candidate was Owalo. Unfortunately, it's not the best man who always wins.
Your opinion,
when it comes to a mediocre political, landscape. Yeah.
But then again, as a nation, because you mentioned the money issue, will we ever get out of that? We'll get to a place where, this person was elected because he fully deserved it and not because alinipatia,
We have a long way to go. When you look at the United States, that is a democracy that is more than 200 years old. So they've gotten to a point where they can control money as it flows into politics. In fact, you disclose who funded you and where the money came from. So we only, I think, 50 to 60 years old as a democracy since independence. So we have a long way to go. And we have so many other issues like tribalism and all that. So even when there's no money, it gets to a point where you've got to vote for someone not because of their vision, but because of their tribal affiliation. Does he come from my region or my tribe or stuff like that? So we have so many obstacles to deal with before we can get to a platform where now we're talking about a party's vision and, ideas as opposed to money and tribe and region and stuff like that.
So now what next for Imran? He has a huge task ahead of him.
He just has to earn the seat. He's been given the seat by people who have a long history of, political participation. We got votes because of Raila's name. Raila is still a big name. He got votes because of the legacy of Okoth. So he has to just go to there and show that he actually deserves the shoes he has, gotten. Yes.
Okay, I'm told we need to wrap up, but we need to switch gears and head over to South Sudan. There's that peace agreement that was signed last year, August, and there was hope. And then after that, there was this deadline for November the 12th to come up for the formation of a government.
Coalition
but that has
government.
since been delayed by 100 days. They did agree on that. What's your view regarding that?
I think the decision to delay the government, formation of the coalition government, is in good faith. I think that is a step to take when you don't have what it takes to form the coalition government in the first place. The beautiful thing is the decision was made by Machar and Kiir together. It was not a one-sided decision. And I think they shouldn't succumb to international pressure to rush into the formation of a coalition government, which will again crumble after a few days. So for them to decide to have another 100 days for the formation of the government is okay, because I'm sure they know what they're talking about. There is issues like security and agreement on sharing of positions and all that. And it's okay. Let them take their time so that when they have that government, it's something which can stand the test of time.
Certainly.
We're tired of seeing guys being displaced and killed in South Sudan.
Yes, and as you rightly mentioned, could you take us through the contents of this peace agreement signed last year? Because as you said again, thousands were killed, over 2 million displaced, So what are the contents of this agreement?
Yeah, they've agreed, of course, to come up with a security force, a joint security force, which will include the formation of a 3,000-member security team for the protection of VIPs, like the president and the vice president. They talked about the formation of a new army, which will include the absorption of the rebels into the national army. They talked about distribution of positions to all the vice presidents. It includes, of course, the absorption of Machar into the formation of the government as a vice president. And, of course, they also agreed on sharing of cabinet slots, which has to reflect, of course, the states. South Sudan has 32 states and about 183 counties. So the regional, representation has to be taken into account, and a couple of other small issues, And of course, they agreed that for this coalition government to be formed, there has to be regional participation, of course, which includes the presence of representation by Kenya, Sudan, Sudan itself, Uganda, Rwanda, and other members of the East African community, which is okay. So it's not such a big deal. The only problem is there has been lack of goodwill for a long time. That is why the first agreement of 2016 collapsed. So once again, the 100-day extension, to me, is reasonable, because they're the ones who are going to form the coalition government. They shouldn't be rushed into that.
Sure.
Yes.
As part of your closing remark, would that be the solution? Will we finally see peace in South Sudan?
If these guys take 100 days and they sort out all the issues as they've requested, and then they form a coalition government, you can obviously expect lasting peace in South Sudan. In which case, now, after losing 400,000 people...
Okay. Well, Mr. Onchari, thank you so much for joining us today as part of our, weekly review in all the events that took place in Africa. And today we were keeping an eye on what happened yesterday, the Kibra by-election, and of course that delay by 100 days of a formation of a new government in South Sudan. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Now, the cows of Qatar's Baladna farm, housed in climate farms in the desert, exemplify the lengths of which Qatar has gone to resist what it calls an economic blockade enforced by its Saudi neighbors. Take a look at our images of the day. And that's